Any others?
In 2 Corinthians 5:10, about the judgment seat of Christ, it says, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that everyone may receive the things done in his body according to that he hath done, whether it be good or bad." What would the bad be in that? Just the things that we should have done for the Lord, or because our sin is covered by the blood, right?
Yeah, if it looks like you're going to give an account for things that you have not repented of and got under the blood and turned from. And so a Christian shouldn't think that just because you're saved doesn't mean you don't give an account for everything. And so I'm not positive. I mean, preachers argue about this all the time, or not argue, but just aren't in agreement with it. Some say once you're saved, everything's covered and you don't have to ever give an account for anything. Well, I don't believe that, because it says the good or the bad, like you're saying. So what it looks like is if you get something covered under the blood, then you're forgiven, but there's still consequences to it, often in this life. But also, even if at the judgment seat of Christ, you're going to find you've lost something in rewards for doing the bad, the sin, and doing things wrong. So it's not just, whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. There's an accounting, even though it's forgiven. So you commit a sin, and you say, "I'm sorry, Lord, please forgive me, and I'll try not to do it again," and you fight it off, and you do good with it. Well, sin still has a consequence. And so the consequence oftentimes come up in this life. For instance, a guy smokes 3 or 4 packs of cigarettes a day for 20 years. And then he gets saved and he says, "Lord, that was wrong. I'm not smoking another cigarette." Okay, what about your lungs? Well, there's a consequence to that. So there's consequences to sins of the Christian life as well. And so John says in 2 John, in the short letter at the end of the Bible there, look at 2 John, verse 8. He says, "Look to yourselves that we lose not those things which we have wrought, but that we receive a full reward." So wrought is something you work, wrought iron. It's an ornamental iron. It's worked over. So there's certain things you're working for right now. You're not working to get to heaven, but you're working for the Lord. So he says, look to yourselves, examine yourselves, think about what you're doing. For those things which we have wrought, the things we've been working for as Christians, that we lose not those things, and we receive a full reward. So you can lose rewards for the bad that you do as a Christian. There's consequences to it. So that's the good and the bad includes what you've done since you've been saved, includes the bad, and you may get there and say, "Here's what I wanted to give you in the millennium, here's what's going to be your reward," but you lost it. And you're not going to have the same reign that you would have had. You're not going to have the same glory that you would have had. You're not going to have the same pleasure, if you can imagine, looking in the Lord's eyes and have him say, "Look what you did for me. Look at all this that went through the fire and abode, and here's all this crowns and jewels that you did for me, and then well done, thou good and faithful servant." You can lose that with the bad. And so that's what he's talking about in 2 Corinthians 5. Now, his argument, what I was going to say is there's difference of opinion about, all right, what if I do confess a sin and I get under the blood? Will it even come up at the judgment? And I think some of the consequences of it will. You may not be getting beaten with many stripes in the illustration in Luke, but you're still going to give an account for it. And it might be an account of, here's what you lost because of it. I don't believe a Christian can just live like he wants his whole life and then say, "I'm sorry," and then not give any accounting for it or no consequence to it. You're not going to get the crown. You're not going to get the reward. You're not going to get the pleasure of standing before the Lord and be able to look in his eyes and say, "That's what I did for you." And so the worst thing about the judgment seat is probably going to be the loss, what could have been. I mean, you think of everything you're doing since you've been saved goes into a fire, and the Lord's right there, and you have to look at him, and he says, all right, let's see what you did. Not just what you did, but why'd you do it. And it goes in the fire, and whatever you did for Christ comes through that fire with the right motive, and then you go through all that ashes, and you find one little gem and say, well, that's what 40 years of being saved, that's what you were worth to me. That'll be a shameful thing. You want to have a wagon load of it and say, Lord, this is what I thought of you. And you can have more. You can keep adding to what you have. But that's why John is that you have to be sober about it. Look to yourselves that we lose not those things which we have wrought, but we receive a full reward. Lord, I want to be able to look in your eyes and say, that's what I thought of you.